Want versus need is one of those things that sounds super straightforward until the second you try to sit down and actually pinpoint what each element is, because then you start to question what's the actual difference between the two, and that's where things get kind of muddy.
Sometimes I'm like a whisper in a riot, but I grow stronger, keep
First things first, shout out to all of these wonderful authors of these books that I'll be referencing throughout the video. If you want to help support me with a couple cents commission while also getting some cool books about writing, you can find them in my Amazon shop. I'll throw the link in the description down below. I'll also put the names in the description in case, you want to buy the books without supporting me. You do you. I mean, preferably by doing the first one. Second thing second, stories are an art form, so of course the only rule is that there are no rules. This is all info that I pulled from research, but a story can absolutely break all of these guidelines and still work really well because, again, it's art. Third things third, what is want? When it comes down to writing strong characters, motivation is essential. Stories put characters through hell, and if we as the audience can't believe that the character has a strong reason to stick around through all of that, we're not going to be able to stick around either. That's where want comes in. Want is easiest to pinpoint because it's external, not just in the way it's presented, but also in conflict. The obstacles characters face when fighting for their want are going to be all outside things like dragons, Voldemort, deadlines, those terrifying things that smack you in the face when you least expect them. Because, deadlines, never see those coming. So when it comes to want, we're talking about the A story, the action sequence, the flashing lights. The want is the premise of the story and should always be clear as day because it's going to be the driving force behind everything the character does and thus the driving force behind the plot itself. Because of this direct tie to the premise, the want will often be very specific to the character and not at all relatable. Take for example The Hunger Games. If we boil Katniss's main want down to its most basic form, we're still left with her wanting to survive a battle to the death. That isn't very relatable. At least, I hope it isn't relatable to you. But that's okay because it's a very strong driving force that keeps the plot moving forward. And I bet there wasn't a single member of the audience in the theater sitting there thinking, I should just walk out. I mean, it's not like I'm ever gonna be in a fight to the death. Because the want is rich with intrigue and questions. We can't relate, but we're interested to see how the character handles the situation anyways. Now, wants don't have to be relatable, but they do have to make sense. There should always be a very strong why, and the character's wants should tie into their roots and their history. For Katniss, it's clear why she wants to survive. I mean, survival is generally something we all strive towards. But there is a deeper driving force as well that Suzanne Collins slips in there, which is Prim.
Just trying to win. If you can. I promise, Prim.
If I'm gonna die, I want to still be me.
I just can't afford to think like that. I'm my sister.
This makes for a very powerful why, which is part of what pulls us in so quickly. Another aspect of a strong want lies in the specifics of it. The want should be easy to envision. Lisa Cron writes, remember that what your protagonist wants doesn't have to be logistically possible. It just has to be concrete. That means creating the rules of the world in which the action takes place and solidifying not only what is and isn't possible, but why. And as Jessica Brody puts it in Save the Cat Writes a Novel, my hero wants to be happy is not a good enough answer. The most effective character goals or wants are concrete and tangible. The reader should be able to know if and when the hero gets what they want. Let's take for example How to Train Your Dragon 1. On the surface it may seem like Hiccup just wants his father's approval or he wants to be accepted as a true Viking. But how do you measure that want? It's too general. But then we're given something more honed in and character specific.
Please, 2 minutes. I'll kill a dragon. My life will get infinitely better. I'm gonna cut out your heart and take it to my father. I'm a Viking. I am a Viking!
Hiccup wants to kill a dragon. That's something measurable. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, Megan, but that was only for like a tiny part of the story. Well, that's the thing with wants, is wants do tend to change a lot throughout the progress of the plot. Sometimes a plot is singular and specific and the character goes all in and think, often falsely so, that getting that want will be the solution to all of their problems. But generally, there's kind of an overarching want that the character then pursues with more smaller, more tangible and specific wants that changes the plot advances. This is especially common in serialized things like TV series, where each episode might have a specific small want, each season a more broad one, and then the entire series may have an overarching, all-encompassing want that they all sort of fall into and contribute to. As an example, the 100. Clark's main want is obviously to keep Sky Crew alive, but although that's a little measurable, I mean if they all died she would have failed, it's not super specific. But we get tons of other small wants throughout the series. For example, she wants to get to Mount Weather, she wants to save Jasper, she wants to contact the Ark. These are things that are much more measurable, but they do contribute to the overarching want that we see throughout basically the entire series. Okay, so that was pretty straightforward, but then what the hell does a character need? Don't they just need the same thing that they want? No, it's not that simple. And the word want has now begun to not sound like an actual word to me because I've used it too often. So the inciting incident of a story generally comes with a problem or an opportunity that ties directly into the main character's want. What the character doesn't know when they set out on this adventure towards the want is that at the end of the path, they're actually gonna find the need. Often the need that they were either in denial about or didn't even know they had. In The Anatomy of Story, John Truby writes, "The need is what the hero must fulfill within himself in order to have a better life. It usually involves overcoming his weaknesses and changing or growing in some way." So whereas wants are very specific, needs are almost always broad categories, overarching themes that ring true to all of us and fill out the heart of the story. And they will often sound cliche when put into simple terms, but they're at the core of most of the stories that you know and love. So unlike want, need is much harder to pinpoint because it's all internal. Need is the B story and it drives theme. In creating character arcs, Cam Wieland writes, "The thing your character needs is usually going to be nothing more than a realization. In some stories, this realization may change nothing about his external life, but it will always transform his perspective of himself and the world around him, leaving him more capable of coping with his remaining external problems." For example, think of Ready Player One. Wade wants to find all of the keys, the Easter eggs, he wants to win this great prize that is the game. But through his struggles to achieve this, he makes connections with other people, not just in the game, but in the outside world, and he comes to the realization that he needs these connections to thrive. So in the end, he gets the want, but he then sacrifices part of it to satisfy the need by shutting down the game for 2 days a week so that people, himself included, can have more human connections. Which, by the way, he should have shut it down for like 2 days every 9 days or something, because the poor people who just happen to have days off that fall on the days of the shutdown, they would be just out of luck and they wouldn't be able to play. And I know that's a dumb complaint to have about a story, but you know. So basically, think of the need as the moral message. In Save the Cat Writes a Novel, Jessica Brody says, "The life lesson is the inner journey that your hero didn't even know they were on that will eventually lead them to the answer they never expected." That's what the need is. And again, when summarized in a single line, these will often sound cliched and kind of cheesy. For example, in The Lion King, Simba's main want is to put his past behind him, to turn his back on his problems, and just run away from them.
It's a problem-free philosophy.
But his need is to confront his past, face his mistakes, and embrace responsibility by taking his place as king. If you want to get practice with kind of pinpointing the needs of specific characters, it is a good idea to kind of watch kids' films because they are generally a lot more on the nose. But these types of messages are hidden in things that you wouldn't even expect. A lot of writers shy away from big thematic revelations that show the character's need because they're concerned about sounding preachy. But when done properly, this can be the final hit that drives the nail into the audience's bone and ensures that they carry the story with them for years to come. You just have to hit the nail on the head without, you know, hitting the nail on the head, which is where it gets a little complicated. The reveal needs to be layered and abstract. It needs to be shown and never told. Basically, unless the story is geared towards children, you should never outright state the need. That's what will come off cheesy. Rather, you should show it through actions and the character's decisions, so that it can be something that professors turn into a really annoying essay question one day. Now, it should be noted that, and especially in series, the character may not always choose the right path at this point. They may end up going with the want and ultimately failing. But generally speaking, most satisfying stories end with the character going with the need over the want. Whether that means they get the want as a reward, or they decide they don't actually want the want anymore, or they learn to live without the want. There are a lot of different ways this can play out, but almost always, satisfying endings will result with the character ultimately choosing the need, and the need will get priority in the climax. K.M. Wieland writes in Creating Character Arcs, sometimes the story will have to end on that bittersweet note of interior gain and exterior loss. But other times, once the character has embraced the thing he needs, he will then be more empowered in his pursuit of what he wants, allowing him to harmonize both his inner and outer goals in the finale. And it's also worth noting that having the want and need interact together and conflict with each other really adds to the complexity of a story and generally pulls audiences more in. The more difficult the decision, the more on the edge of our seats we're gonna be. Whereas the obstacles a character faces in pursuing their want were all external, the obstacles a character is gonna face in terms of realizing their need are going to be internal. For example, in How to Train Your Dragon 3, Hiccup's main want is to find the hidden world so that dragons and Vikings can live together in harmony. And the main thing sort of fighting against this is the dragon hunters and the fact that he has to actually find the place. These are external obstacles. But what Hiccup needs is to realize that dragons will be safer on their own. He needs to let go. And the obstacle he faces in terms of this realization is, of course, his love of Toothless and his love of this colony that he's watched grow over years and years.
I was so busy fighting for a world that I wanted. I didn't think about what you needed. Lead them to the hidden world. You'll be safe there. Safer than you could ever be with me.
Want to bawl your eyes out over that? Go watch this video, which apparently some people watch sometimes just to cry. I'll link it in the description down below. Okay, so that was it for general needs. So now we're gonna talk about moral needs versus psychological needs. What? There are more needs? Yes, I was also concerned and slightly exhausted, but it's interesting, I swear. Ambitious stories will sometimes give a hero a psychological need as well as a moral one. In John Truby's Anatomy of a Film, he states, a psychological need involves overcoming a serious flaw that's hurting nobody but the hero. A character with a moral need is always hurting others in some way, his moral weakness, at the beginning of the story. Later on, he goes on to say, in good stories, the moral need usually comes out of the psychological need. The character has a psychological weakness that leads him to take it out on others. A good example of moral need is, I believe, Breaking Bad. Walter White wants to leave money to support his family, and this drives him to do ever-escalating things that get worse and worse, which eventually lead to this moral need of him needing to realize that it's not worth it, that he's ultimately doing more harm than good, and his psychological need is, I think, that he needs to learn to let go, to come to terms with the life he lived and accept the legacy he wrote before the diagnosis. So that was it for this video. So comment down below, what's your favorite character arc? Because I want to analyze, and why can't I say analyze today? So comment down below, what's your favorite character arc? Because I want to analyze what the want and need is. Again, make sure to go check out this How to Train Your Dragon video I did. I'm super proud of it. I really like how it came out. I'll link it in the description down below. And if you're interested in something a little more writing based, you can check out this video on prologues. If you like dark dystopian books, new adult ones that play with cliches of the genre, check out ALETHEIA. It's available in hardcover, paperback, and ebook. And thank you so much for watching. As always, I will see you in the next video.
Say you believe in your belief.